All right. Well, it is the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. Today, we are going to be talking about back to school marketing strategies for schools. We wanted to go over trends, we wanted to go over strategies, tactics, tips that schools really should be thinking about now before back to school season kicks into gear. And part of the reason why we wanted to have this quick discussion and invite people for Q&A was because things have been a little bit weird with COVID. So earlier this year, typically we see a peak in January, and we saw a little bit of what we called a delayed up season. So January did do better, and we did see a bump, of course, from October, November, December, like we usually do, but we didn't see as much of a bump as we anticipated. However, what we saw happen next was a lot of our schools saw exceptional and even record-breaking, March, April, and then we started seeing things die down after Memorial Day weekend in May. So it was like a little bit of that bump that we were anticipating for January kind of held off and ended up coming in the spring or throughout Q1. So now we want to take a look at, okay, what do we think is going to happen over the summer? What do we need to be preparing for as we go into back to school season? And just joining us, I wanted to introduce everyone on the panel today. So my name is Stephanie Carter. I'm the COO of Oozle Media. And our speakers / panelists today are David Steiner, who is the Director of Paid Ads at Oozle Media, Patrick Knoll, who is the Director of Organic Marketing, and Parker Dickens, who is our Director of Accounts. And I'm sure you guys have seen these guys speaking at the Beauty Summit or at AACS events, or even working on your account if you are an Oozle client. So I wanted to kick off with kind of like a trends report. Again, what data are we seeing from Google? What things should we anticipate from the demographic that we're really going to be targeting for back to school, that, Gen Z, millennial group? So Parker, do you want to kick us off with what you're seeing there and take us through some of your back to school thoughts?
Yeah, great question. It's interesting. I think people are kind of like you prefaced this webinar with, right? We expected kind of a big bump, a big jump in January as restrictions were lifting up. COVID is kind of hopefully becoming more of a thing of the past. And we didn't see quite the bump that we had expected. And I think the first thing that I would kind of let schools know on this webinar is back to school season is probably going to look a little bit different this year as well. One of the reports that I saw from Google, and I have their slides up, I could share them if we wanted to, but the crux of the slides from Google were basically Gen Z and millennials, which collectively they call next gen. They're going to travel. There's a lot of pent-up demand to get on a plane, go reunite with friends, families, even relationships across borders, across states have been kind of put on hold or have been made virtual, that people are just looking forward to traveling and reuniting, and they're looking for experiences right now, was kind of the big takeaway from those slides. They're looking for things that are new, things that are different, things that are going to break up the routine of sitting on Zoom calls for hours on end for the last year and a half.
Yeah, Parker, I think that that's some really interesting insight. So with this group looking for those experiences and traveling, again, what do you think that that means for back to school marketing, and what should schools expect as far as lead flow?
Again, great question. So what I think a lot of schools should be doing, and we're certainly prepping for the schools we work with to use this type of messaging, is, usually with back to school, we use that kind of messaging. Get back to school, get back in the classroom, find your new career, right? Become a cosmetologist, an esthetician, massage therapist, whatever it is. And I would say that that's the logical argument to make, is find a new career. What I would say schools should be doing is using more of an emotional argument this time of year, and using things like find your home or do something new, try something different, make it an experience, make it your own adventure. Really try and lean into the emotional reasons why people might want to go to school. Unleash your creativity, think outside the box, all those things that are so have been like pent up and building up inside after having to quarantine for the last year and a half. But because, and that is the messaging that I think is going to help. To answer the second part of your question, what do we think is going to happen with lead flow? I do think leads are going to be slower than we're used to throughout the summer. Is usually a slow time anyways, but back to school, it's really, I think, going to be a little bit more of a dip because people are wanting to travel. And as much as we can do to kind of reel them in with that emotional argument, I think people are still going to want to have the more fun experiences that are more, objectively traveling, going to see the world, going to see friends, some of those things that I mentioned earlier. So I do think we'll see a slump. I'm hoping we'll see kind of a delayed back to school season where we'll see a big bump in October, November, where things normally start tapering off and people will start to realize, okay, weather's getting cold, time to get back inside again. Maybe I'll do something since I've spent the last 6 months traveling. But I would anticipate, and we're seeing it even right now, leads slowing down pretty much across the board for all programs and all schools.
Yeah, I would say, traditionally at Oozle, 4th of July weekend is like the lowest traffic, biggest dip in interest in school. And again, I really felt that this year after Memorial Day. And I think it's just continued since then. Now, I think that what you said was really important, this idea of people are looking for experiences. We're seeing, like Parker mentioned, a lot of travel searching, music events, festivals, concerts selling out in 24 hours, 48 hours. Frankly, people want to make up for maybe the lack of summer, the lack of fun that they had last year, and get back to that. Just to reiterate, Parker, the emotional and the social connection, I mean, that is something that schools offer, right? People often look at the pictures at a school or check out a school's Instagram just to see if the students that are featured on there look like them and look like people they would be friends with, right?
Right. I mean, they're looking to see if they fit in. They're looking for a sense of belonging. They're looking for their group, their tribe, so to speak. You've shared in several conferences in years past about Samantha Vey being turned off from a school because one of the students in one of the pictures that the school was tagged in was flipping off the camera. And she's like, no, I want people to take the beauty industry seriously. And she went and found people a school, what was an hour and a half away. Instead of driving to the school, a 10-15 minute drive from her home, and gave up her job and I think moved back in with her family, or that whole big story of her choosing to go to a school that on paper looks like the worst option. Like it's not as economical and not as easy for her, but she was still willing to basically sacrifice everything else to find people that she belonged with and an education that she felt she was going to get the value out of.
So as far as marketing and drawing schools in, it sounds like, if schools can create an experience, an event at their school that gets people in the building where they can, again, socialize, they can connect, they can have an experience, then that could translate to their digital marketing, right? Through like video ads of that event, or maybe another way that we could help with that emotional connection is student testimonial ads or alumni stories.
Absolutely. And I think in addition to finding that sense of belonging, making an experience, making it a social thing, even, finding people that you feel like you could hang out with outside of school, there's that other aspect that I mentioned earlier of making it your own, having some ownership over it. And those slides that I referenced that Google put together, they talk about marketing, like messaging to use in 2021. They said that there are brands that see 59% increase in I'm guessing traffic to the website or brand lift when they use terms around safety, flexibility, and full control. So using terms that make it, the flexible scheduling, leaning heavy into that, full control, safety, things that I think people are consider, they don't want to put their families at risk if they're at school all day and then come home and maybe are going to bring home illness to their family. So using safety, using the flexible scheduling, choose your own schedule, come in the evening, come in the morning. We've got schools that are offering programs where they can choose any 3.5 hour period throughout the day, whether that's the morning, afternoon, or even evening. And it doesn't matter if 3 days a week they come in the morning, Thursday they come in the afternoon, and Friday they come in the evening, or maybe reverse. Maybe they want their Friday evenings to hang out, so they come in the morning on Fridays, but come in the evenings during the week because they've got children, that they've got to take care of during the day. So that kind of flexible scheduling, more and more schools are offering it out to people, and I think that's going to be huge, in addition to, like you mentioned, the social side of things, finding your tribe sort of thing.
Well, I think there's a larger conversation going on in the country. I mean, even we're having it in our office where people expect things to change. There's this idea of like, yes, we want to get back to quote normal, but also there are things that people are like, hey, this is a chance to reset, rethink about how we want to do things and how things fit into our lives. And so I do think the schools that offer flexibility and show that they are cognizant that people have different needs, especially around childcare or jobs, will win in this game as well. Now, Patrick, Steiner, did you guys have any thoughts on this that you wanted to add before I asked Parker another trends question that we wanted to hit on?
I would just say, obviously, make sure that you're still complying with whatever government guidelines are out there for distancing or whatever else that you need as you do plan experiences. But if you are in if you have a comfort level and state restrictions that allow you to have something that's more intimate or more able to have people in your place, the younger generations are ready to do that, and that's an advantage that you can take if you can.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, just to sort of add to it, I guess, when it comes to the creative, especially on Facebook, when you're looking at visual creative, keeping that in mind with your imagery. I know for a long time we've started putting people with wearing masks in the imagery so that it looks like it's up to date and it's current and it's safe and it's complying with whatever guidelines are in place. And it might be really important to update that imagery to make it current with whatever's going on at your location at this time, right? I mean, it's always important to put people's faces and people's smiles, especially in imagery like that. So I think now, in situations where you're not needing to wear a mask, having that smile back in the images, I think is going to be a really big deal.
Yeah, definitely. Again, conveying that emotional connection, social connection, and even that sense of safety. Parker, there was another trend that we saw coming up. This has been actually across a lot of national media outlets that we thought might impact our schools and might impact messaging as well. And this is really around the workforce and how it's changing. Do you want to touch on that for us?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about the Great Resignation. I think it's been dubbed. I've seen, New York Times articles talking about the Great Resignation, and Forbes and stuff, articles saying how you as a business owner can survive this and all this stuff. And, it's kind of a scary statistic. I think the statistic, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Steph, but I think it's 27% of the American workforce is considering resigning, putting in their 2 weeks notice. And, think about 27%, 1 in 4, a quarter of the American workforce. And that's the American workforce in general. I think people think of that, it's like that's probably retail workers, or it's probably 27% of like fast food and restaurant hospitality, things like that. But that's the entire workforce, 27%. And there are some studies I've seen come out that do segment it by retail, hospitality, desk jobs, white collar, blue collar, those kinds of things. And I've seen some industries saying that 40% of those industries are considering putting their 2 weeks notice in. And so, if I'm a beauty school owner, one of the things I'm thinking about is how does that affect me? If, obviously you've got concerns for your own staff, your admissions team, which often might have high turnover anyways, and instructors and things like that. But what does that mean for potential enrollments is kind of the thing that I would like, the frame I would put it in. These are people that want to switch their careers. They want to do something different. Maybe they've been working the desk job for the last 10, 15 years, and they just want to do something different. And I would say for a lot of those folks, Doing hair, doing skin, that is different. That's something creative. It allows a connection with other people. But that means what that's going to mean for marketing and for messaging is you might be marketing to people that you're not used to marketing to, different age groups or different backgrounds that you're used to having. When we onboard new schools and we ask them, like, describe your student body, and they're like, oh, cosmetologists. They're usually females, 18 to 24, fresh out of high school, or, you know, maybe they dropped out of like a nursing program, something like that. Our estheticians are a little older, sometimes single moms, mid-30s. You know, we hear that over and over and over again. I think be open-minded to different messaging, seeing a different demographic come through your doors, people who are wanting to try something new. And if you're not using different messaging or not trying to get in front of those people, you are missing out, I would say.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I've definitely noticed all of us have felt the shift in the interest to skin, right? Everybody wants skin. This has also changed a shift in who are the people most likely to visit your school's website. I've noticed with client after client after client, we used to see the largest group of visitors were like 18 to 24, and that has definitely moved over to 24 to like 30. So I think that's part of the skin trend, but also I think people are feeling and even thinking to themselves, man, what did I want so bad when I came out of quarantine? I wanted to get my nails done. I wanted to go get a facial. I wanted to pamper myself. I wanted to treat myself. I wanted to get new hair. This is all stuff that now these folks are thinking, you know what? There are so many job openings for the job I used to have. You know, we're talking about like working at Target or maybe at a hotel or a restaurant even. All of those people are advertising jobs. If I go and I take the leap to pursue my passion, and for some reason it doesn't work out, there's a job waiting for me. So it feels like there's a really big safety net to go and pursue some of these hobbies or these passions into a full-blown career, because it kind of feels like, well, if it doesn't work out, there's tons of people hiring. There's a lot of other stuff that I can do. And I think that one of the things we've always heard about esthetician programs especially is career changers. You know, this is their second career. They've had something else, they've done something else, and now they're feeling confident and ready to pursue another avenue. So I think the idea of leads slowing down in the summer because people want to travel, they want to have fun, they're making up for last year. They're looking for social connection experiences. They're also maybe looking for, now is the time to take a chance on a different career path because it feels like there are other jobs. Those are definitely things we're going to want to keep in mind going into back to school season. Let's jump over to paid ads. So Steiner, we have so many clients, almost pretty much 99% of our beauty school clients are running PPC ads. A large chunk also runs social media ads with us. What are the things that you're seeing? What would you want schools to think about this summer and heading into back to school season this year?
Yeah, a lot. There's a lot to think about. I mean, I mentioned a little bit already with, and it was talked about by Parker as well, some of the messaging that's going into those ads, right? Making it more about kind of an experience. You know, typically every year we have ad copy that we'll try to update for that particular time of year, right? One of my favorites is, you know, fall in love with school again, because it's kind of fall season. It makes a reference to that, but it's school as well. And stuff like that has generally worked. This time it might be a little bit different. You might have to kind of work into what you were talking about earlier, the experiential side of things, right? Like talking about the atmosphere or sort of the experience that you might have rather than just kind of the career aspect of it too. So that's one of the things I think we'll need to be thinking about a lot. The other thing I think that's really important, especially when it comes to messaging, is that people, I think, over the last year have had their perspective of what a brand is and what a brand does change a little bit. And people don't want to hear from brands anymore. People want to hear from people, right? So making sure that your messaging is authentic and comes from kind of the people side of your business, I think is going to be really important as well. I mean, we've talked a lot in the past. It's always been important to have content generated by your users or by your students. And I think that now, even more than before, it's going to be really important to have that kind of messaging and that kind of connection between your business and the people that you're trying to speak to.
That's great. So David, what are your thoughts as far as like budgets? I know traditionally we've said like, hey, again, 4th of July, we in the past years have seen a dip, and that usually goes through the end of July, but usually by like the last week of July, early August, we're ready to add more budget. People are running out of their budgets, or we see opportunity to spend. What's your sense on budgets this year and when they need to increase, decrease?
Yeah, if I could only tell you the future, it's really hard to know exactly what's going to happen. But I think the thing that we're going to have to try to do is be as flexible as we can over the next few months, prepared to spend a little bit more if the demand is there, and kind of the flip side of that, prepared to spend even if they're not, but spending in maybe a different avenue. I think Parker mentioned that we may not see the sort of spike that we tend to see right at the same time we used to see it. It may be delayed, kind of like it was at the beginning of this year. And if that's the case, we'll need to be flexible with our search budgets, for example, that are sort of demand based on those search terms. We might want to have ready the budget available to expand in the case that the spike happens at its normal time. But if it doesn't, maybe keep it reserved for the next month or two later, if that's when the spike comes. Be willing to sort of flex with that and have the budget ready for when it's going to be needed. So on the flip side of that, I kind of mentioned being able or willing to spend even when the demand isn't there. This was something that we learned last year, kind of right through early summer, I guess, when everybody was really unsure about what was going to happen with the pandemic. We saw a lot of our schools, I don't want to say get scared, but not knowing what was going to happen, needing to make cuts, needing to adjust. They pulled budgets away. And the schools that were able to keep spending, but spending on, maybe upper funnel messaging, upper funnel targeting, on display ads and social ads, they were able to keep their school and their name relevant and top of mind for people who maybe weren't ready to search for it at the time, maybe weren't ready to become a student because it was so up in the air about what was going to happen. But the schools that were able to shift their spending into those different targets saw a really good response when students were ready to convert. When they realized that they could go back to school, and it might be different, but they could still continue with what they wanted to do, their mind had already kind of been set, and they had time to think about it, and they were able to know which school they wanted to go to because those schools were still running ads and reaching the people that
they had a name in mind. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's exactly what I was going to bring up. That one of the biggest things we saw happen last year was kind of our theme at Oozle with our clients was keep calm, market on, right? The people who could keep marketing going, even though we shifted it maybe from heavy conversion budgets up the funnel to brand awareness. When we look across the board at Oozle's school performance and lead count, and when things started to come back, definitely a benefit to the people who kind of steadily invested in their marketing. They absolutely won market share. There absolutely was opportunity. We heard a lot of people even aggressively increasing their budget, especially in some competitive markets where they really saw that as an opportunity to quote unquote buy the dip, to use some stock market terminology, and again really plant some flags in market share that had previously been unavailable to them.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a great point. And yeah, I agree. I mean, that's my sense is I think we have to stay flexible. We're still navigating the pandemic a bit. It's not completely over. There's still some fear about this new variant strain that's coming out, fear for people who haven't been vaccinated yet. And again, flexibility was a lot of what kept our best clients performing in a strong way last year. And I think, you know, that idea that the January dip was a little muted, but it did eventually come. I feel like we might see that again with back to school for sure. Patrick, Parker, did you guys have any thoughts on that you wanted to add?
I'm glad you touched on market share, because I was also going to kind of remind everyone that's what we talked about last time. As people dial back on their marketing spend, suddenly you could buy that up. And one of our account managers, you know, Kristen, this morning in our morning meeting talked about, she's like, I'm having a hard time explaining to clients or getting clients to understand rather that like the reason why their traffic is down year over year, even though the pandemic is less of a concern now, is because she's reminding these schools, hey, remember, we did shift budget up the funnel a little bit. We had more display. We had, you know, YouTube, whatever it was that we're not running as heavily right now, or is it more competitive, more expensive to run as more people are marketing now than were compared to these schools last year. So they see slight year over year dips in traffic actually because schools aren't as aggressive with their middle and top of funnel paid advertising as they were in previous years. So I guess I say that just for context to other schools who may be seeing the same thing and maybe forgot that they made some of those decisions last year and they're no longer doing some of those things this year, is very interesting.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, let's talk with you for a second. So as far as organic marketing, I know that you had mentioned you looked at some Google Trends as far as like search interest in beauty school from Google's point of view. What can you see there? What can you tell us from, again, the organic side of marketing that schools should be aware of?
Yeah, so I just pulled up Google Trends report. This is basically something like a free tool that Google offers out there for anybody to use. We actually have used it in the past for other kind of research type of items, but just pulling in some just really basic search terms just to kind of get an idea of like what that kind of interest volume looks like purely from an organic standpoint, from just Google search volume that's happening. And so the blue and the purple lines are kind of your more general terms, beauty school, hair school type of terms. And you can see pretty consistently over, you know, over a 5-year period. And then guess what? The big old drop there. Everybody knows what that was when that happened. And then you can see how this line is, I know it's a little hard to see, a little hard to read, but you can see a little bit of an upward progression. But again, it's still not quite to where it was pre-pandemic levels, just from a raw organic standpoint. And again, these are just general terms. Like this doesn't reflect, you know, terms like beauty school near me, for instance. There definitely has been a rise in those types of terms, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit too. But the thing that's interesting to see again is some of these more specific type of terms, cosmetology school, esthetician school, makeup school, things like that. Those are trending upwards a little bit more, and they're even above or above the pre-pandemic period, especially aesthetics, like we touched on earlier. You can see that esthetician school has just been on a continuous rise of something to do. Makeup school is down quite a bit comparatively overall, and then cosmetology school roughly about where it was previously. So some of these specific terms, people know a little bit better, I think, and are a little bit more informed as well of like, this is the type of school I want to go to. Whereas previously it was just kind of a general like, I guess I'll go to beauty school. But there's been a lot more program specification, a lot more specialization, I guess.
Segmentation. Yeah. Like I do think there's definitely people understand. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, we were having discussions about how do you educate people about aesthetics and what an esthetician program does. And that's not the case anymore. A lot of people understand skincare now. So they do know to look specifically for an aesthetic program at a school.
Yep, exactly. And so being able, if you have a specialization in a program of some sort that it does give you a competitive edge, or if you can incorporate that somehow and get it approved and all that, that's definitely going to set you apart. And that's something that we would definitely recommend for you to be able to do, because it's so, people people are more informed. They're just more aware of the opportunities that are there for them. And so when they search, they do that. And the other thing that has also been a trend over the last few years, and I don't have a screen share for this, but is the rise of near me searches and the rise of Google reviews and things like that. Google over the past 5 years, let's just say as well, I mean, it's been more than that, has gotten increasingly more hyper local and more able to distinguish and push people who are closer to you, because a lot of times you don't want to drive over an hour to get to a beauty school, you know, if you can help it, or unless you're got a special circumstance, right? But there
are people who will, right? Like what we saw with Samantha
yes.
Baker's story, where it's like, if the local school near me doesn't have good reviews, or I don't feel good about their social media,
exactly,
that they're doing, I will pick the other school that is farther away.
Exactly, and that is kind of the main point there, is just because you're the closest doesn't mean that you're the best, and that's what these people want, is they want the best option for themselves, and you display that with Google reviews, which is also part of Google's algorithm. Responding to those reviews, also part of Google's algorithm. All of these things that Google is pushing towards these days is geared towards the end result of the user experience. If your user experience, which is the real life experience that somebody gets at their school, if you're able to portray that online, social media, Google, on your website, etc., you're much more likely at having a very good chance at converting somebody.
Right. Well, and I think there's even like an SEO strategy that we've been talking about more, where it's using program specific keywords in reviews. So when we're asking for reviews from our students, it's no longer just, hey, this was a great school, it had great teachers, I loved it here. It's like, let's talk very specifically about what program you were in, what your experiences were, what you learned, and having those keywords in the review is a huge help to people who are reading reviews and trying to evaluate if this is the right school for them.
Steph, I did want to just jump in and say those slides that I've referenced 2 or 3 times now on this webinar from Google, they're specific to the travel industry, some of these terms, but they said that, talking again in the context of the travel industry, but I would presume it probably applies broadly, they say that good reviews or good reputation is 41% more important to next gen consumers than it was pre-pandemic. So for people who maybe have been neglecting their reputation or thinking it's okay, now's probably a good time to start investing a little bit of time into teaching students how to ask for those reviews, teaching people how to manage their reputation a little bit better.
Right. Yeah. And that's where we've been talking a lot about, your reputation is your brand, right? When we hear schools come to us and say, we want to stand out as a school, we need people to know who we are, what you're talking about is your brand. And I do feel like sometimes people don't realize, either you're going to consciously cultivate your brand, or it's going to be cultivated for you by the students who have actually gone to your school, actually had that experience, and then gone and told people what that experience was.
Yeah, exactly. And this just lends to it. You can see here, these are just little information blurbs that Google's trying to give you a feel of what that brand is like, right? For us, these are the things that people have mentioned in our Google reviews. And so, you know, any way that you can get the quote unquote keywords in the reviews, you know, don't try to force it, right? But do try to encourage people to leave reviews about your specific programs or the specific things that they really liked. Because these little bubbles, they're popping up, and they're starting to pop up in a lot of different places. So it just kind of goes to show your brand matters, your brand culture matters. And if you can push it, that voice, that brand out onto the online space, you're going to be so much farther ahead of anybody else.
Well, guys, we're coming up on our time. I know we're a little bit over, but I did want to get some Q&A in.
There's a question.
Yeah, there is a question. I'm going to read it right now. It's basically, how is the expiration of federal pandemic unemployment benefits versus pent-up demand for travel impacting interest in beauty school programs? And what is Oozle planning to address that, Cliff?
Great question. I'll jump in there. It definitely is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But honestly, I'm not that scared about the end of unemployment benefits. I think for some people, it's really scary. There are some people that are in really precarious situations financially where that end of those benefits is going to be pretty damaging, pretty difficult. But for a lot of people, it's going to mean a kick in the pants to move on to something in the future. And for schools that are accredited that offer financial aid and offer solutions that can help ease the burden, or scholarships. I've even seen schools offering more scholarships directly than they have in previous years to try and make that burden be a little bit lighter for students, or discounting tuition as needed. You know, you can always raise it again once the economy is a little stronger, once people are a little bit more confident. But between all of the subsidies and checks that went out broadly, even to people not on unemployment, and then folks that are on unemployment, I actually think the end of those benefits are going to only cause a short-term dip before people start moving, people start figuring things out. And to Stephanie's point earlier, there's a bigger safety net in terms of low-skilled labor that you can always fall back to and supplement. I mean, anyone could easily go, and even if some people unfortunately feel like, oh, that's beneath me, I couldn't go work in a fast food job or work at Target or whatever it is, but push come to shove, you could easily replace or exceed those unemployment benefits by going and getting a job like that as a temporary fallback or safety net, like Stephanie put it. So I do think we're going to see a couple months probably where things feel a little rocky, a little shaky. Like I said, back to school season isn't going to be what we, I think, are used to, but I'm not scared of it being a cliff per se. And anyone else on this, on the panel, feel free to correct me if they're feeling differently, but that's kind of the way that I'm interpreting the situation and reading it.
Yeah, again, I think I just go back to last year was incredible to experience from a data perspective. Like what we as an agency got to see for schools across the country and what happened. And it really was, we were asking ourselves, is this a cliff that's just going to keep going down? Is it going to be a U-shaped recovery, a V-shaped recovery, a check mark recovery? David brought it up before. I think all of us agree. The people who consistently invest in marketing, keep ads on, keep thinking about their brand, keep getting their message out there, stay present, make themselves available to people who are looking for them. It's kind of like what they say about investing in the stock market. The best strategy, the best game to play is just to consistently invest, and it will pay the dividends over time. And that is where I think we've just seen, again, the schools that kept spending money on marketing across the board. I mean, we've been working with some of our schools for more than 7 years. So feast or famine, these clients have been investing budgets. Yes, there are times when maybe they pull back a bit. There's times when they add a lot more, but across the board, they're like consistently investing. And again, in times of feast or famine, they reap the benefits of that. They truly do. And so I think that one of the things I feel like I'll take away from surviving 2020 and in the future as I'm consulting with schools is I just believe that more strongly now than ever. You have to consistently invest in marketing. It doesn't matter if you're getting more leads than you've ever seen. You should still be spending on marketing and grabbing that market share, and then when things are hard and your competitors do not have the advantage of the same brand awareness or the same, strategy or time built up on some of these platforms, you will reap the benefits of this. So let's do one more quick round robin before we wrap up. I'm going to put each of you on the spot a little bit. What's the one thing you would do if you were a school owner right now in regard to marketing? I'll start with you, Parker.
Great question. The one thing if I was a school owner that I would do in regards to marketing. Well, like you said, I would keep investing, even if a cliff did happen to the user that asked that question. I would continue to buy up that marketing share, but I would ask my marketing team, account manager, whatever it is, to start putting together today, sooner than later, a campaign or a strategy around some of the things we talk about. Ask PPC to adjust the messaging, to be more experience-based, be a little bit more emotional. And the other thing I'd start doing, if I hadn't already as a beauty school owner, is I would start getting those open houses going again. Open houses, they're social, they're an experiment. Get some food out on the table, make it fun, make it exciting, put an event on Facebook that people can RSVP to, share, put some budget behind it, make those experiences, make something fun, make get-togethers happen, and create a reason for people to talk about you, talk to you, engage with your brand, and adjust my brand messaging around that.
Cool. Love it. All right, Patrick, you're next. You're in the hot spot. If you were a school owner, what is one thing you would do today to increase your leads?
Well, I think Parker's 100% right. And I thought a very similar thing. You've got to have something to get people to know you. And then from, the other half of me, that's the SEO guy, that's what I'm known for, is if you are not investing in a strategy for Google reviews, you have to do that. It's far past time, right? And even if you are doing it, take it to the next level. Start looking for keywords, start looking for ways to respond to delight the customer, right? Like the way to help them do that. You can do that with your own students. You can do it with your salon guests. All of those people, those are all eligible candidates to do that. If you need some help with some training, let us know. We have a great training. I think that we've established over many years for us to do that. So I think that those two are my big things: is have some experiences and then let people write about it. Let others tell your story.
Love it. Yeah, Oozle is, we have team members who are fully vaccinated, ready to travel again. So I agree. If you want some in-person help with your reviews training, Oozle is definitely ready and willing to offer that option. All right, David, for you, you're a school owner today. What is one thing you're going to do to help increase leads to your school?
Yeah. Now, I won't say that this is the most important thing, but I will say that right now, the thing that I want to see people trying is doing a video tour of your school as an ad. I think that everybody with their own phone could give a 2.5 or 3 minute tour. Everyone's been doing virtual tours this last year, I think a lot anyway, so hopefully you're pretty good at it by now. But something super simple that's authentic through something as simple as your phone, using that to grab people's attention and get them familiar with your brand is something that we could run as an ad during this sort of slump that we typically see during the summer, to keep that presence there, to keep your name on people's minds, and give them a little something that they maybe didn't know about you or whatever. I think that would be a really fun thing to see. So that's the one thing I would say right now.
It does not have to be polished.
Right?
Yeah.
Your microphone in the phone and your camera on the phone is typically these days good enough. So I'll try that.
I will add in my own 2 cents before we wrap up here. Again, I'm in the same boat as David. This is not the most important thing. If you do not have PPC ads, social ads, a good website, those are all like foundational stuff, SEO strategy. I think you got to have those things in place. But for those of you who do, for those of you who know you have a great website, know that you've got an SEO and content strategy, you're running PPC ads, you're running social ads, one of the most powerful things I have read in the past week from Google is the quote that says, people want to connect with a person, not a brand. So for far too long, we have seen school owners who are just completely behind the scenes. And again, this doesn't even have to be owners, but somebody needs to be the face of your school. Somebody needs to be getting on camera consistently, being the spokesperson, the face, the voice, the person that someone thinks of when they think of your school. Your school cannot be faceless. It cannot be nameless anymore. You almost need like a mini influencer representing your brand. So with the rise of TikTok, the rise of Reels, I just think you're going to need more and more somebody, again, who's willing to jump in front of the camera, answer people's questions, be an emotional connection for them, and someone that they're actually going to be excited to meet when they go to the school. When they go toward the school, they'll be like, hey, you're the one from TikTok. You're the one from Reels. You're the person I watched the video of on YouTube. I think that that's going to be really powerful for schools moving forward as well. Okay, guys. I don't see any more questions from our participants, and we've gone a little bit over time, so we'll wrap up today. There will be a replay and a transcript available on our blog soon. We'll email that out to everyone when it's ready. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we will speak to you soon. Bye, guys.